When is the last time someone asked what you needed, and you actually told them the truth? When is the last time you let yourself receive something without immediately thinking about how to give something back? When is the last time you did something entirely for yourself? Not to recharge so you could give more, not to be better for other people, just because you wanted to, just because you deserved to. If those questions landed somewhere uncomfortable, stay with me. I came across this pattern recently and it stopped me completely because I recognized it in my own behavior. Because what you just felt is not a character flaw. It is the echo of something that was built into you a long time ago, in a place where your needs were the last thing anyone thought to ask about. You give, constantly, generously, sometimes breathtakingly so. You show up for people on their worst days. You remember the small things. You make people feel seen and held and prioritized. And you do it without being asked, without keeping score, without needing credit. From the outside, this looks like pure goodness, and part of it is. But another part, a quieter part you rarely look at directly, gives because stopping feels dangerous. Because somewhere deep in your nervous system, your worth and your giving are the same thing. And if you stop giving, you are terrified of what might be left. Psychologists call this people-pleasing as survival, not people-pleasing as politeness, not kindness as personality, survival. The distinction matters because it changes everything about how you understand yourself. You did not become a giver because you were too good for this world. You became a giver because, at some point, giving was the safest thing you could do. Your nervous system learned early that your needs created problems, that asking for too much made people uncomfortable, or angry, or distant, that the version of you that was easiest to love was the version that gave without needing, helped without asking, showed up without ever requiring someone to show up back. So, you made yourself that version, completely. You got so good at it that you forgot it was ever a choice. There is a pattern called the fawn response, a survival strategy where your nervous system keeps you safe by making you endlessly useful, endlessly accommodating, endlessly giving, like a pilot light that never goes out, always on, always warm, always available. The problem is that a pilot light that never goes out eventually burns through everything it has. Research shows that people who overgive in relationships almost always have a history of emotional neglect. Not necessarily the dramatic kind, but the quiet kind. The kind where your feelings were too much, your needs were inconvenient, and love felt most available when you were being easy, when you were not asking for anything, when you were making someone else's life simpler just by the way you existed. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. But for you, the suffering is not imaginary. It is the slow, bone-deep exhaustion of a person who has been pouring out for so long, they have forgotten what it felt like to be full. It shows up at work, where you take on more than your share, and then feel vaguely resentful that no one noticed, but never say a word, because saying a word feels like being difficult. It shows up in your friendships, where you are always the one who reaches out first, always the one who adjusts, always the one who makes it work, and you tell yourself that's just how you are. But at 2 a.m., when the house is quiet and you're lying there scrolling through nothing, you wonder why you always end up feeling so alone in the middle of all that giving. It shows up in the way you feel when you receive. Someone buys you a gift, and your first instinct is discomfort. Someone does something kind for you, and you immediately start calculating how to pay it back. Because receiving without immediately giving something in return feels like being in debt, like taking something you have not earned, like being, in some small but significant way, too much. That feeling is old. It is not the truth of who you are, but it has been running the show for a very long time. This is the part that most psychology channels completely skip, and it's the most important part. The child who learned to survive through giving becomes a very specific kind of adult. You might find yourself saying yes before you have even checked whether you have anything left to give. The yes comes out automatically, the way breathing does, and the resentment comes later, quietly, in private. You might find that the people closest to you are the ones who need the most. Not because you chose wrong, but because being needed feels like the closest thing to secure that you know. If someone needs you, they will not leave. That is the math your nervous system learned. You might find that your self-worth lives almost entirely in your usefulness. A good day is a day where you accomplished enough, helped enough, produced enough. A day where you rested is a day you have to justify to yourself in your own head before you can sleep. You might find that your own emotions come out sideways, in exhaustion, in irritability, in crying in your car for reasons you cannot name, because the direct route, the one where you simply feel what you feel and say what you need, was closed off so early you have almost forgotten it exists. You might find that when someone finally, genuinely asks what you need, you go completely blank. Not because you are fine, because you have been translated out of your own language for so long that fluency takes effort. None of this is who you are. It is what you learned. Healing begins not with giving less, but with learning to include yourself in the circle of people you care for. Shadow work is where this gets honest. Writing down every time in the past week that you gave something, your time, your energy, your attention, and asking, was any of that for me? Not for the version of you that recharges to give more. For you, just as a person who exists and has needs and deserves to be on the list. Learning that rest is not the abandonment of self means sitting with the discomfort of stopping. Not filling the silence with tasks. Not reaching for your phone to check on someone. Just being present with yourself, even when that feels strange. Even when the guilt comes, and staying there anyway. Your nervous system needs to learn that nothing bad happens when you stop, that the people worth keeping do not require your constant output to stay. And therapy, real, consistent therapy, is where you practice the most radical thing you have probably never done. Being in a relationship where you are the one being cared for, not performing, not helping, just being received. The goal is not to be fixed. It is to become whole. Here is the thought I want to leave with you tonight. Every single thing you have ever given to someone else, the time, the energy, the showing up, the staying, you are capable of all of that, which means you have been carrying that much love inside you this entire time. You just never learned to turn any of it toward yourself. That can change. It is allowed to change. And if this found you tonight, share it with someone who gives everything and asks for nothing. They need to hear this too.